Hello Team FD and welcome back to Winners and Losers, where we break down the latest and greatest World Cup action for your viewing pleasure. And it's a pleasure to say I'm joined by Henry, by Dougie, and we're going to do the Portugal and Uruguay game before opening up on some of the players that we've enjoyed watching in the group stages. Right, let's start with the best player then, a player that helped Portugal through to the next round after exacting revenge on Uruguay, of course the side that knocked Portugal out of the 2018 World Cup. Portugal, FYI, now sit top of the group on 6 points, plus 3 goal difference. Looks like, job done, although there were moments in this game where they struggled. But who helped them power through, Henry, and who was probably our man of the match?
Well, Bruno Fernandes. There we go. Who would have known we were going to say that name?
Giving away the whole concept of the video in the opening 30 seconds.
No. Listen, I was amazed to hear this was their first win against a South American team since 1966, Portugal. That seems pretty wild. And obviously got revenge for that defeat in the last 16, 4 years ago. But yeah, Bruno, great player actually. All that kind of talk of how he was going to be in the team with Ronaldo going into it. I think he's been exceptional in the whole tournament, really, hasn't it? I mean, I'm saying he scored twice in this game. Other people might disagree. Some people would suggest he got a goal and an assist, but I think it was pretty clear that Ronaldo did not touch that ball, although let us know what you think in the comments down below. But yeah, a great game in general, really. 6 shots, 5 accurate long balls, 5 passes into the final third. That's a team high. 6 ball recoveries as well. He really, he worked so hard for club and country too. 2 out of 3 ground duels won. So yeah, loved his performance actually. I just thought I don't think he steals the limelight, and I think he's very selfless in a lot of the work he does, which I appreciate. I think we were saying he speaks really well as sort of a leader and a dressing room figure. So excellent performance in what could have been a bit of a bogey game. And we saw really that Uruguay, when they want to turn it on, can be a bit of a handful. It's just a little too late in this game, and I think a bit of a really bizarre substitution to go attacking by Portugal when they were meant to be sort of like closing down the game.
Yes.
But yeah.
We might talk about Fernando Santos' reluctance to take Ronaldo off come the end, which pretty much set Portugal up as a 4-2-4 for a bizarre 10 minutes where Uruguay managed to get back into the game. We have to give some credit to Bentancur, because I think this game towards the end became almost a one-on-one slugfest between Bruno Fernandes and Rodrigo Bentancur. I thought their fitness shone through in I think the 9 minutes of injury time, and they were both trying their best, weren't they, to compete for their respective teams. We've got some numbers down here. Do you want to roll through them? And then just maybe we'll talk about Joao Felix, because he had a promising first half, did die off towards the end, scuppered our first concept for this video, but then we'll get on to that, mate.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely worth talking about in due course, but I thought Bentancur, as you say, continued his great from the opening game as well, where I thought he was excellent, and probably showed up the player that we were most excited to watch probably in this Uruguay side going into this tournament, Fede Valverde. I thought he actually looked quite tired in both games. For the first time in his career, a guy who is epitomised by his energy, his work rate, his tenacity, just didn't look quite at it. But Bentancur, complete opposite. Most tackles on the pitch, one of the most duels in the game as well. I think it was 12 passes into the final third. And it was he that nearly, scored that wonder goal in that first half, which actually ended up being a great save by Diogo Costa with his sort of inner thigh, very close to a very sensitive area there. But it was a great work from Bentancur in the build-up. And as you say, he's just continued that magnificent form from that Spurs team and carried it into the World Cup. And I thought in that first game, he was the guy that was picking up the ball off the centre-backs, trying to find Fede Valverde in dangerous areas. Couldn't really do that. And actually, Uruguay's forwards and wide players in this game, and in both games really, have had really quite quiet tournaments, really. Darwin Núñez probably not at his best. Cavani was maybe a slight improvement on Luis Suarez, but Luis Suarez has looked very much his age this tournament as well. I thought Varela on the left wing-back as well wasn't particularly impressive either.
If the Uruguayan attackers can't get close to Cavani or Suarez, then they're just left up there by themselves and they can't really do anything at this point in their careers. And there was too much space, I found, between the attack and that kind of like marauding midfield. And it was only when they threw on Arrascaeta, Maxi Gomez, etc., and closed that gap and started getting bodies in the box, suddenly we saw a much better Uruguay. But when they're being stretched and they're playing defensive, they look really toothless.
Yeah, and just to give your stats some extra context, the Bentancur ones, that is. I mean, William Carvalho put up 7 ball recoveries. That was a team high for Portugal. Bentancur, 18.
Wow.
And 12 passes into the final third. I think the one you mentioned there, 5 for Bruno Fernandes, that was also a team high. So this was a really complete performance from him, and he was doing every aspect of the game to the highest level. And I often felt just people around him either couldn't keep up, weren't on his wavelength, or were just flailing in the heat, weren't they? And sometimes he just had acres of space in front of him, having already travelled 20, 30 yards with the ball. And like you said, kind of just ran into a dead end with Suarez knocking about the penalty area, or the fullbacks. I thought Varela was quite poor as well on that right side.
He was
Bit of a weak link, wasn't he?
Yeah,
And Oliveira on the left as well didn't have his best game either.
Oliveira on the left, yeah. But I digress. Let's talk about Joao Felix a little bit, because we were saying in this game, particularly the first half, someone needs to save him in January. And Atletico might need saving themselves financially. So is this going to be a case, Dougie, you think, where both parties win?
Potentially. I think it's been a bit of a sad story, really, his time at Atletico Madrid. And a move to Man United would be great for him personally. There's also been links with Chelsea, of course. Just going back to Bruno Fernandes briefly, got to be considered that best post-Fergie signing by a distance. Joao Felix, for me, for Man United, would be a bit of a risk. I think €126 million fee. I think pound for pound, he's got to be up there with one of the worst signings in football history, really, alongside Coutinho. Maybe Eden Hazard probably takes top spot in there as well. But for me, he's had injury issues, which has, held back his progress at times. But he still hasn't topped 10 goals in all competitions in a season for Atletico Madrid. He's had chances. He plays in a very defensive side, one that I would not want to be a forward in personally. Never enjoyed watching Atletico Madrid. But has he delivered enough in the moments that he's been given? I wouldn't say so. I think he's averaged about 0.35 goal contributions per game, which, given his fee, given his reputation after that one season at Benfica, really hasn't been good enough. So for me, a move to a Man United and a Chelsea would be an enormous risk, despite that potential. Even in this game today, you see flickers from him. But in terms of taking games by the scruff of the neck and dominating them, game after game, I've just never seen it in his career.
Yeah, I actually wanted to see, when Leao came on, him come on for Ronaldo, Leao to go out to the left, and Felix to have a little bit of time through the middle. Just thought that might be an interesting experiment, but Fernando Santos did not go for that. So we've got a kind of a breakdown of him potentially going to Manchester United. I agree with Dukes. Hasn't done enough to justify the fee that would probably be required to get him out of the Wanda Metropolitano. But where else could you see him going, or where would you like to see him go, Henry?
I'd like to see him go somewhere where he can really be the main man, because there have been games where he has sort of grabbed Atletico by the scruff of the neck and been their leader. I think in the Champions League last season, if I remember, and recently in a loss against Cadiz, he came off the bench and was really influential, got a couple of goals. So he can be that guy if they want him to. It's just tricky, as Dougie's kind of alluded to, within the Simeone system. He likes to drift out left. It's about finding the position for him, as you say. You'd love to see a bit of diversity in this game. So yeah, I'd like to see him go to a team, maybe even Italy in somewhere, like Inter Milan maybe, or Napoli, or AC Milan is going to be difficult with their kind of financial situation. But I'd like to see him go somewhere where he can really imprint himself on a side. If we've seen how well Brahim Diaz can do going over to Serie A and become a bit more of a star, then I think Joao Felix could really explode, because it's all there. He just needs a loving arm around him to really sort of elevate him to the next level.
Yeah, it's a difficult Venn diagram, isn't it? Because it's that loving arm and probably a team that plays expansive football where he's going to get a bit of freedom, but also a team that can afford him, because Atletico Madrid are going to want to peg back most of that €120 million fee that they paid for him.
No one's going to come.
So Manchester City, maybe.
Yeah. I think he's got 3.5 years left on his contract as well. And given their financial situations we keep on alluding to, I think they're up for either selling him, Rodrigo de Paul, or Yannick Carrasco in January.
Well, Rodrigo de Paul is driving his value into the ground at this tournament.
Yeah, he's not having a great tournament. And it does feel like Felix has kind of realised that this is opportunity on the world stage, playing in a very good, or amongst very good Portuguese players at least, maybe not the best team in this World Cup, to really stand out. And I thought, actually, early on in this game in particular, was him sort of showing himself, getting himself in the shop window.
Yeah, for sure. A couple of special mentions as well before we move on then to who you boys have really enjoyed watching otherwise. Nuno Mendes in this game was great before he came off at 41 minutes. Still made the second most final third passes in the first half. That was after Bruno Fernandes, a 92% pass accuracy, which sounds a little bit vanilla, but if you watch the full game, you'd probably appreciate his preciseness in that regard, because those around him definitely weren't at that level. 4 out of 4 ground duels complete, 2 dribbles complete, although Guerrero was good when he came on. I think added impetus down that left-hand side. But let's move on then to our bonus round, the best of the tournament so far then. Who we think has played the best and who you've enjoyed watching the most, which might not necessarily be the same thing. I've got some names down here. I'll just give you the top 5 according to general stats, just to kind of jog your memory. Antoine Griezmann, Bruno Fernandes, Szczesny, he's been working overtime in that Poland goal, hasn't he? Mehdi Taremi, great to see him up there, and Enner Valencia as well, carrying his nation. Who wants to jump in then with their shout?
Sure. I mean, I've got a few shout-outs I want to give. Mohamed Kudus from Ghana, I think he's been excellent. I think his substitution in that opening game was a big mistake, actually, as it turned out. And they'd even, have a much better chance of qualifying. I still think they're 2 points ahead of Uruguay, and that's going to be a fascinating game on Friday afternoon. I also think Hakim Ziyech has had a very good tournament. Achraf Hakimi's had some nice moments for Morocco. But quite boringly, I'm just going to go for the player that gives me the biggest thrill to watch him, and it's Kylian Mbappe. I think it's almost like watching Usain Bolt in his prime, watching Kylian Mbappe. Like, he does seem just so much better than the defenders trying to mark him, so much quicker, so much more dangerous. And I think he is just now the best player in the world by quite a distance, actually. I don't think it's even particularly close. Yes, Lionel Messi has those consistent moments, so does Neymar. But in terms of just terrorising defenders for 90 minutes, there's no one close to Mbappe.
Yeah.
I think he's been sensational.
As a goal scorer, Haaland obviously comes pretty close, but as an all-round footballer, it's got to be said, he is looking in a league of his own, claiming a lot of ankles in this tournament.
Yeah.
Poor Nelson from Denmark almost snapped him in half, didn't he? Who are you going for, Hennes?
Well, I mean, I actually think Griezmann. I'm still backing Griezmann. I think, 9 key passes in the game so far, in the tournament, sorry. I just love watching him when he's sort of happy and confident again, dropping into those spaces, linking up the play. And I think it's his ability to draw players away that gives Mbappe the freedom to be able to do what he does. Let's not forget, Mbappe plays nationally and for club side and around amazing players that are able to facilitate him being able to dominate opposition fullbacks. But I do agree with you completely. I think he looks exceptional at this moment in time. But I've always been a fan of De Bruyne as one of the best players in the world, and not in this tournament, but just what he does and the way that he makes the magic happen for Haaland, etc. So yeah,
he's too busy slugging it out with all the
exactly. Yeah, I'll go for Griezmann. But I will say, think about the best players after the first 2 rounds so far. You've got to think about the players that have made a difference across both games. And Enner Valencia's got 3 goals. He's dragged Ecuador, who are looking really promising, actually. I'm very excited for their final group game. And then, actually, joking aside, obviously Szczesny's not the best player at the tournament, but 9 saves so far, a penalty saved against Saudi Arabia, a double save in that game. Some people still criticise Szczesny, but he's had actually a remarkable career since he's gone to Juventus, following the footsteps of Buffon. I really rate what he's done in this tournament.
And his post-shot XG for Juve, since the age of 26, 27, staggeringly consistent. Yeah,
he's great. He's brilliant. And obviously, Taremi, I think that one performance against Wales, that was inspired by what he did in that game. But yeah, maybe Valencia or Griezmann. They're my top 2 so far.
Yeah, I think some people, but a course correction in this tournament. It'd be nice to see Szczesny sort of solidify his legacy as a great goalkeeper, and Morata's as a good goal scorer. Let's hope that he starts in the next game. One of my players that I think deserves a little bit more shine and excels, that's Japan, isn't it? I also think Griezmann, I feel like in this tournament he's evolving in a really interesting way and is France's linchpin. He joins that midfield to attack really well, doesn't he? And is just nice to see him sacrifice himself for the greater good of the team. I think he doesn't get the credit he deserves for being selfless in that regard, because you do think of it as a bit of an individual player and as a bit of has had an inflated ego in the past. Let me reel off some stats for you then before you lot at home can give us your best player of the tournament so far, or the player you've enjoyed watching the most. Like you said, Griezmann, Taremi, Teo Hernandez leading the way on key passes per game with 4.5. Hakimi, De Jong, Milenkovic, 4.5 tackles per game. Wanted to put the spotlight on some defensive work there. And Raum Nurolali and Rice leading the way on interceptions as well, 3.6 per game. So yeah, hopefully that has got your juices flowing back home. Hit us up with your suggestions in the comments below, and we'll get back to you in the first hour. And keep your peepers peeled for more content on FD and EFD. Like this video, subscribe to the channel with notifications on, and we'll catch you next time. Goodbye.